Welcome to the Never Ending Backlog podcast, your place for short reviews from a gamer with the goal of reducing his backlog. From adventures to sandboxes, join our host as we walk through a collection of unplayed treasures. Now, let's take a look at the featured game of this episode of the Never Ending Backlog.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Never Ending Backlog podcast. I am your host, Zach. And today we will be reviewing Tales from Candlekeep, Tomb of Annihilation on Steam. On the deadly peninsula of Chult, an adventuring party must fight their way through dangerous jungles, labyrinths, and dungeons to find and reverse the cause of the death curse. Choose to play as one or more of the four adventurers to face many perilous challenges and deadly foes throughout the quest. The genre is adventure, RPG, strategy. The release date was 2017. The developer and publisher was BKOM Studios. And regarding what else they've done, they've made a ton of mobile games with large properties such as Transformers, Marvel, DC, Ghostbusters, Star Wars, etc. They've done a lot of mobile games out there. And like I said, many large franchises. You can find them on their website, which I'll have linked into the podcast description. Regarding Steam games, looks like the only one they've done is the Tales from Candlekeep series. However, they're responsible for all the DLC and expansion packs, which there are quite a few of them available for this game. The current price for this game is $15.99, and according to Is There Any Deal, the best price was $3.19. The install and startup, the game installed relatively fine. It's about 1.5 gigs total, which actually isn't that bad. The graphics are very smooth. It did force all three monitors originally, however, it only put the game in the center monitor, which was appreciative. However, I did push Alt-Enter to go into windowed mode, so I could use OBS to actually record gameplay footage. If you're watching this on my website or on YouTube, you'll see gameplay footage to kind of correlate along with this podcast, so it's really helpful to kind of see what I'm talking about as I'm talking about it. Audio, the soundtrack is very nice. It does have that fantasy, medieval experience that you'd expect. Also, the sound effects are really nice. So whether it's the dice rolling or creatures or your characters or voiceovers, it all works really well. The videos also have nice audio. Controls, this is primarily a mouse game. You can use your keyboard if you want to for things like skipping to the next turn. You can push spacebar to go to the next phase. However, you can also bypass all of it and use the mouse if you'd rather use that. It's very friendly for like a laptop. It'd actually be a really good one since this is a turn-based strategy type of game with different phases. Regarding gameplay, this is actually very similar to Mansions of Madness by Fantasy Flight Games. It's a board game a company who also made Lord of the Rings, Journeys in Middle-earth. I've actually played most of Fantasy Flight's games that are all in this way. And for those that are not aware, Mansions of Madness is basically a horror kind of thriller game. It's a board game. And you basically have characters you play as, and you basically move through this giant mansion. The really cool thing about this is, you can play it single player if you'd want to, or you can play with larger groups. But also at the same time, it offers that Dungeons and Dragons experience where the entire game board's not laid out in front of you. There are items that have not appeared yet. When you go and you continue the storyline, you'll see more items pop up. And the really great thing also about it is it actually correlates and uses either a computer or a tablet. And that basically becomes the dungeon master. So it'll say, your character walks into a room. And then it'll say, now place this room tile and put these icons here. And basically when you're moving through, you can say like, oh, I want to move up here. And it basically tells you what that item is. So it basically offers you an interactive way of playing Dungeons & Dragons by yourself, or a very light version of it. And this game plays very similar to that. You're not to the next tiles. When you go into, maybe go to the edge to go to the next world or the next tile, they'll basically drop it in front of you. And it's pieced together like a board game. So if you're looking for a more immersive, like this is more like an RPG, this is more like a board game experience just played out on the computer. Just like I mentioned, Mansions of Madness, Lord of the Rings, Journeys in Middle-earth, or even Dungeons & Dragons, Wrath of Ashardalon board game. It's very similar. It's this interactive kind of co-op, between the computer and the actual physical space. The difference is with Tales from Candlekeep, Tomb of Annihilation, it's purely computer only. Difficulty, I found this game to be extremely difficult. Then again, it is based on rolling dice, because it is a Dungeons and Dragons game. It is licensed for Dungeons and Dragons, but I'm terrible at these type of games because I roll just terrible all the time. Unfortunately, D20 is a 20-sided dice. I always roll like 1s, 2s, and 3s. Unfortunately, I never get 20s. It's rare. You'll even see from my gameplay footage, I just constantly roll bad things, which is unfortunate. But that's just the way it is sometimes. So let's jump into the pros and cons. For pros, it's an interesting D&D campaign rolled into a PC game. There's a pun intended regarding the roll component. Sorry, had to do it. It is really fun. I think I found it really grasping. The levels are broken up nicely as you traverse the map, so I think that's nice. The graphics and audio, the soundtrack is all really nice. I think it's really well done. And for just over 1.5 gigs, that's really, really impressive, actually, because it's not that big of a game, and it looks really nice. Also, I'll say it works really well, too. There are no graphical hiccups. There was no bugs. Like I said, it pushed all 3 monitors, and it centered on the center one, which is really nice. I was able to go into windowed mode without any issue. Everything just worked really well. So jumping to some cons, unfortunately, there is no multiplayer. I guess I kind of understand why it wouldn't be as much fun. I think I'd probably wouldn't have minded online multiplayer. I know, sharing the same screen would be more difficult with this type of game, but I think online multiplayer would be fun. It is a luck-based game primarily, even though it is computer-based. I mean, it is, if you roll poorly, you're not going to do that well. And unfortunately, that's just the way it is sometimes. Like I'd mentioned, I rolled a lot of 1s, 2s, and 3s. So even disarming traps, they'd blow up in my face and I'd get hurt. The game does offer you plenty of opportunities for you to kind of heal or retry levels, which I really appreciate that. But it is a challenging game. There's no argument about it. And also, this is a Dungeons and Dragons light game. If you're looking for the creative freedom of Dungeons and Dragons, this will not offer it. It's just absolutely will not do it. First and foremost, I am a huge fan of D&D games. My buddies and I in middle school and high school would meet at my friend's house and we played D20 Modern for hours after school. We played various zombie and monster campaigns, and I absolutely love the creativity and limitless options in Dungeons and Dragons. We didn't really get so much into the medieval stuff. Our stuff, like I mentioned, it was D20 Modern, which think of it as, guns and those type of materials. That's something that we've always played as. It works really well. It didn't seem that buggy. Fortunately, the people that I played with really knew the game really well, and they were really good at teaching. So I learned everything I learned from them. They taught very well. They were very patient. They also allowed us to be as zany as we wanted to. That's the fun thing about Dungeons & Dragons, for those who are not aware. It is a very imaginative, creative game. Since there is a storyline written out, but you can do a lot of crazy things. So you'd be like, oh, there's someone in the distance. What do you want to do? You can be like, I want to take off my shoe and throw it at them. You'd be like, okay, roll the dice. Go ahead. And if you roll a high enough dice roll, you do it. And then they basically just change the storyline to match that thing. So it's fun that it allows that zaniness and that creativity. It makes it more immersive, especially if you play with the right group of people. The really fun part is, when we were playing D20 Modern at my friend's house, we didn't have the game board or the pieces. It was purely us talking and them explaining the storyline to us. We had a character sheet that we'd make sure we keep track of our inventory and our health and all those things, but there was no game board. We just talked and sat on our couches and drank a lot of Mountain Dew and ate a lot of Doritos, and it was just a really great time. So obviously, Tales from Candlekeep do not offer that much of limitedness because it is constrained by a PC game. But it is a very enjoyable game. It does bring me back to the D20 and the Dungeons & Dragons times, which is really good. It is a fun board game. I would love to actually see this. I think actually it is a physical board game as well. I might pick it up because, like I said, I really like Mansions of Madness and Lord of the Rings, Journeys in Middle-earth. So I'm sure I'll probably like this one as well. So would I recommend this game? If you like D&D games, if you enjoyed the board games I had mentioned earlier, I'd absolutely pick this up. It is $15.99. Maybe try to grab it on a sale. There are a ton of DLC, so you get to kind of expand further and further onto this campaign, which I like. I like that ability too. It is, like I said, very much a board game. So I guess my take on this is I would probably grab it on sale if I were you. That's my personal preference. Or I also liked playing these games in physical format, and when I was on their website, I believe I saw that they do offer like the box copy of this game where you can play it in physical format. I would probably try to play it on there because it likely does integrate with a tablet or a computer, very similar to this does. And then you can actually continue the storyline by yourself. So I recommend it. It's a good game. Even at $15, it's actually not a bad game. But maybe pick it up on sale or pick up the physical copy if you're more into board games. But overall, great time. It's a fun single-player adventure. You'll definitely get your money's worth. I didn't get to play it for very long, but it was definitely gripping. And it also killed me a million times, but I enjoyed it. So that was my review of Tales from Candlekeep, Tomb of Annihilation, and I'll see you next time.